Veterans Day. It's been a really interesting week coming up on Veterans Day. I have a lot of friends who are veterans here in Knoxville. Some are in the Navy, some are in the Army, some are in the Marine Corps, some are in the Air Force, Coast Guard. But you know what? The veterans I remember clearest right now are the guys that I served with for the aircraft carrier Ticonderoga in 1972. We were ordered to Vietnam in 1972. We had 24 hours to pack our gear, get aboard the ship with all our airplanes, and go to Vietnam. It was an interesting time. It was an interesting time in the country. It was certainly an interesting time in the Navy. So we headed to Vietnam, and we went by way of Pearl Harbor and Midway and Guam, and then and the Philippines, and then we finally got to Vietnam. Well, if you know anything about sailors, every port we hit, we don't remember very well. You know, I mean, that was the days, folks. You know, it was the early 70s, and people drank, and they smoked marijuana, and they took acid, and they did all kinds of stuff. And in the Navy, they taught me how to really drink. I thought my father taught me how to drink. He didn't. The Navy taught me how to drink. But the guys I'm talking about, there were 4 of us, actually 5 of us, and we were kind of a crew, really. You know, we hung together, we ate together. We got really hungover together, and we did a lot of other stuff together. And as a matter of fact, these guys were the best men at my wedding, the first time I was married. And so I want to tell you a little bit about him real quickly. Walter Willis was a little bit more reserved, and but a very bright guy. He was from Texas, and so he was in his mind, he was a Southerner, and suddenly he was kind of cast into this world of people who were not from where he lived. And so Willis kind of tended to be kind of quiet and watched, and I had a sense that he was uncomfortable with some of the stuff that he saw going on amongst the sailors. Because when we were at sea in the aircraft carrier, we segregated ourselves aboard the ship. And so when we would go down to eat in the mess hall, the African Americans would sit in one area, and everybody else would sit in another area. And that was a really hard time in the Navy for people of color. Filipinos, African Americans, it was a difficult time because we were coming out of a period of time when the only kind of jobs that a Filipino or African American could have were working in the kitchen. Now those of you who are a little bit older know I'm telling the truth. That's the way it was for a long time. That began to change when I got into the Navy, but I think that Willis was mystified by it. Arthur Trisvan McNeely. Definitely a Southerner living on the ridges outside of Louisiana in a little town called Pineville. Another extremely intelligent guy who came from the mountains. And he hated being a racist, I could tell. But that's how he was brought up. I'm not apologizing for it. Trust me, I'm not. But Triz was a good guy who gave everything he had for it. And then Steve Trudeau. Steve Trudeau was my friend, and we hung together for many, many years. And he was crazier in a different way than me, because a lot of us were a little bit tilted. And then there was me. There was one more guy. Michael James O'Brien. Michael James O'Brien was an Irishman from the Bronx. And I think he ended up in the Navy because the judge probably told him he had to go. And Michael J. O'Brien was also a guy that gave everything he had for you if you liked him. He was a heck of a guy, had some kids, but he had a problem. When the rest of us started wising up and knowing that we had to give up some of the lifestyle that we were participating in, he couldn't give it up. He couldn't give it up. And he ended up leaving his wife and kids in San Diego and went back to New York. And the last that we heard, Obi had shot himself. Probably related to heroin. That's kind of what we heard. And I'm saying that because I want you to understand how a lot of veterans feel about these things. I love the guys that I served with. They're an integral part of my life. We were in danger together. We were comrades. We saw things that other people never saw. We did that together, and we stuck together. And so losing Obi was like losing a chunk of who we were, really. But there was some serendipity that occurred in my life this week, and if you don't know what that word means, I have a definition, believe it or not. The faculty or phenomenon of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. This last week, Walter Willis called me. He had been out of my life for over 40 years. He actually didn't call me, he sent me an email, and that was better. He said, "Are you the Ron Morton who served in VS-29 aboard the USS Ticonderoga? And my response was, "Yeah, where the hell you been?" Because that's how it felt. You know, that closeness. So as a result of being in contact with Willis, I've gotten in touch, or I'm trying to get in touch with the other guys, the members of our crew, because, you know, we ain't going to be around a whole lot longer. I was surprised to find out that we were all still alive. I figured at least one of us had died, but that wasn't the case. And when I talked to Willis about what had happened to him after he got out, real quickly, Willis became the master of a boat that transported workers and equipment from the coast to the oil rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico. And he retired from that. Now, that's a heck of a thing. Triz settled back in Pineville and went to work for the electric company, because Triz and Willis were both electrical guys. And he stuck with them and retired. Steve was a successful insurance agent in San Diego, moved back to Minnesota, has done quite well for himself. And then y'all know me. But what I'm trying to communicate here is that when we celebrate Veterans Day, we are celebrating the links and relationships between human beings that were tried under fire in dangerous circumstances And so if you see veterans reacting strongly to things, maybe crying when nobody else is, that's why. That's why we celebrate veterans. And now we're living in a world, we don't know what's going to happen next. But if it happens, the draft will come back, people will be drafted. I know there's folks talking about that now. But the most important thing for me to remember is that nobody really wins a war, but the young people got to fight them anyway.